Sometimes I forget what a monumental shift Mount Royal went through in the years leading up to and culminating in the 2008 university designation by the province. We took a publicly funded institution with over 1,000 employees, 13,000 students, a 100-year history of diplomas, certificates, and university transfer, and we bootstrapped it into a 4-year baccalaureate university on our own. Unlike BC or Ontario, where the governments were involved, the Alberta government placed a lot of roadblocks in our way. But somehow, it happened. This video isn't about the official transition. That would probably make a feature-length film all on its own. It would be categorized as a suspenseful thriller, starring Donald Sutherland as David Marshall. No, this is about the bigger transition, the shift from a college to a university culture that started well over a decade ago and is still going on. Some say we're only midway through it. During the transition, many faculty expressed to me and in public forums that they feared we'd fall down the research rabbit hole. By that, I think they meant that bringing in faculty that were engaged in a significant amount of research meant that we'd become like they saw U of C, with big gulfs between the faculties and a culture that placed student learning a distant second priority. They feared a loss of what made Mount Royal special. And what was it that made this place special? Did those characteristics even survive the transition? Do new faculty even notice? Well, what I notice is that the sense of shared endeavor that was a key part of that transition, the town halls, the debates about criteria for evaluation, rank, IP, well, those have all turned into a range of solitudes, where faculty from different areas, chairs, admin, we're not really talking about the substantive issues. And maybe the best way to begin that dialogue is by listening.
We really need to look at what's happening in terms of the enculturation at Mount Royal, what happens to new faculty that are coming in. And I think it's also really important to talk about the feelings that senior faculty or faculty that was here in the college model, what they're experiencing as well. Because my fear would be that not only are new faculty having trouble, but senior faculty are also not having the quality of work life that they deserve, as well. And so I think that what happened was we transitioned to an institution and we put all the structural things in place, but we never thought about how that cultural shift is going to happen and how we're going to try to bridge it with each other.
I would like to have opportunities to get to know more of the new faculty who are here and learn from them and build on their enthusiasm and their sparks. They've got so many, they have a vision and a goal of where they want to be in 10 or 15 years. I'd love to hear that. And is there something I can learn from them? Is there something they can learn from me? How do I find those opportunities to build with those new faculty other than those in my department?
I think you'd have to be careful, because with some people examining it too closely, you might find the flaws in the pedestal upon which our good selves rest, and be very scary.
Scary, yes. But do we ever really stop and think about the pedestal that we do rest on? When Canadians travel abroad, we're usually pretty good about learning about and fitting into the cultures that we parachute into. We like to fit in. But have we ever really tried to describe the Mount Royal culture for the more than 225 new faculty who've arrived since the transition? Or do we somehow expect this to seep in through osmosis?
We would work together, we would talk together, and so we were very collegial, and I know that's a cliche about Mount Royal, that we were a collegial faculty, but we were. And so we talked a lot, and we talked about what was important to us, and what did we want to make sure we kept, what could we change and not change the core of who we were at Mount Royal. So it's almost like taking a program out to scale, and you want to ensure that there's still the fidelity of that program. What's the core of it that cannot change? And what can you change depending on the various contexts? So we had a lot of discussion, and I think we came to that core of what was the fidelity that we needed to keep at Mount Royal.
Because they were a teaching institution. They were basically, bringing in students, first couple years anyway. Of course they had some diploma programs and certificate programs and whatnot, and then kind of setting them free. It's changed now that we're a university and we have all these degrees and so on and so forth.
The core was that we taught. We didn't have grad students who taught. We taught. So students would come to university and they would pay for a university, or in that time college education, and they would be taught by the faculty of that college, and that was important. Small class sizes, obviously, that's a no-brainer. And that students would be connected to one another, not only within their own program, but to others, but they would come out of Mount Royal with a very strong identity. Who were they? First as students here, and then as graduates and professionals. They needed to know who they were and what that meant to them.
We all wanted to become a university, I think, because that's where we came from, right? We were trained in university, so that's the world that we knew. Once we became a university, another type of initiative started to take hold. We hired a lot of people, and a different type of culture started to emerge. What was it we wanted by becoming a university? What did we think we would be able to do as a university we couldn't as a college? And I remember the conversation being, we wanted to have students for longer. We wanted to have them for 4 years. We didn't want to just start their career and not be able to finish their career. And I think more discussion about that institutionally is valuable, because I don't know if we thought through that enough. We were, I think, on any objective criteria, the best college in Canada. On student satisfaction, on any criteria, we were the best. Aren't we at risk of becoming just another university?
But because we were a college, I think a lot of times our graduates weren't seen as competent as those who might have graduated from a university as opposed to a college.
For me, what it came down to is the number of students I worked with who said, I have to go off to U of C, can I come back and use your library? And I wish I could finish my degree at Mount Royal. And the comments that I was hearing from other faculty and from when I was occasionally also asked to write a reference letter is that a reference letter from one of us didn't mean as much as a reference letter from somebody at a university. When we were trying to assist these students to get scholarships or into different programs or different opportunities. And so for me, it just came down to we could do as good a job in some areas and better in others, I think, of getting students all the way through their degree programs.
By the power of an order in council of the Government of Alberta, from this day forward, this fine institution will be known as Mount Royal University.
So it happened. The unique opportunity arrived to redesign the institution from within. Even if the board kicked it off and the new president held the tiller, it was the faculty that had the chance to have their say in what the institution would become.
On the one hand, we asked for the opportunity to talk about this and to be actively involved in this. We were totally given that opportunity, and it became very difficult. It was a huge workload issue to continue to be teaching 8 courses and be involved in all of those committees. But on the other hand, not only had we asked for it, but it meant, asked for this opportunity to speak and to be engaged. We owned the product. We didn't always come to consensus, which I think initially we had hoped that we would. We didn't always come to consensus, but we all had the opportunity to be heard, and we all had the opportunity to accept the final products.
There haven't been a whole lot of models. We wanted to be in some ways, I think, like a smaller liberal arts institution with some sciences. In some ways, we wanted to be like maybe some of the university colleges in the BC system at the time, Malaspina, now Vancouver Island University, or maybe some of the what's called the New Universities group, more in the UK. So that real focus, undergraduate teaching. There weren't really models that were exactly what we wanted in Canada. Nipissing was probably as close as anything.
But faculty, I don't think, ever understood how it was going to change their work life until the switch went. And then it happened so fast that, you know, it's 2013, we're still scrambling. We're still making decisions off, you know, the fly, trying to fill classes, trying to fill student needs and all that.
Transitioning to a 4-year university wasn't simply a matter of adding 2 more years of advanced classes and printing a bigger calendar. Fundamental shifts had to occur, far beyond those in the curriculum. Students would be arriving with a completely different set of expectations. The governance model had to be uprooted, and faculty had to prepare to shoulder that huge responsibility. And, to cap it off, research was now a fundamental component of what faculty do. And so, the concept of 2 work patterns was born. TS is the teaching service stream, representing the historical pattern that all faculty had followed to that point. And we added the new TSS, or Teaching, Scholarship, and Service stream, that had no precedent at Mount Royal.
So we needed to enshrine that group. At the same time, with AUCC, there was a mandate to conduct research. So we needed to also make space for scholarship in faculty. And we realized that we needed to make that space not just organizationally, but also in workload. So working out how TS and TSS might work and might work in tandem as a real choice for faculty. So part of that came through in the building in places where you can change your mind. Other institutions, and there's not much in the literature, or there wasn't at the time, about the transition from a teaching-focused college, two-year college to a 4-year institution. But the ones that we did find had a lot of mission drift. That in terms of what they started out with and wanting to say that they were valuing teaching, what actually happened, what got credit, what counted in evaluation was the research and the scholarship, no matter how much they said. And we wanted to avoid that as much as possible and to put teaching in the documents.
Some people will say, no, we haven't done a good job. And hindsight is 2020, as the cliche goes, but we can look back and learn about things that we shouldn't have done, but there's no way that we could have known going forward from 2006 what we had to do. So I think under the circumstances, a fairly good job has been done. I'm not one of those faculty members who has an axe to grind on this issue, really, because it's a big, challenging transition. And there's going to be unhappinesses on coming from various quarters, and there's really nothing you can do. There's going to be somebody who's unhappy. The challenges, ongoing challenges over the next decade will be melding the old culture with the new culture of young researchers who value teaching, but also feel strongly that research is important, and we have a growing wider culture of research, particularly around the hard sciences, the so-called hard sciences.
I think anybody who expected 100% happy, joy was dreaming in Technicolor. I have seen 2 different cultures valuing or devaluing each other. Not all individuals by any means on either side. I have seen faculty who've been here for a while talking about some of the new faculty and characterizing them as being more interested in research than in teaching. I have seen faculty who have not been here for very long characterizing the faculty who have been here as not understanding research. And I think that's tribalism, it's herd instinct, it's going to happen.
So what are we going to keep the teaching side for? those people already feel devalued as an institution, that they feel they're doing a 4 and 4 workload, that they have to keep up, their SEI scores and things like that, when the other side doesn't have to.
I guess my impression is that there might have been a bit of a fear that we lose this quality as a great teaching institution. So I can sense that some people were concerned that all the new people would take over and it would just be research. But I don't think that's actually the case. Like, everyone here loves to teach, and so I don't think we're losing sight of that, but there's a fear of that.
I think the perception was that I was a researcher and that's what I was coming to do, which wasn't the case. I mean, I love teaching. I was really just as interested, I'm 50-50 interested in both. And so I think after a time, once people figured that out, it was a lot smoother.
And see, the minute I say that, I can already anticipate reactions saying, oh, you don't care about good teaching. It's not true. I care about good teaching in everything that I do in terms of this job. And dare I say it, I'm actually a very good teacher.
So I was coming from the University of Toronto, highly competitive. And you make that decision to come into undergraduate education, you're kind of faced with a little bit of stigma from both sides. So your institution that has trained you or educated you is disappointed because you're not at this research intensive institution. And so you get a lot of flack around that. And so you're making, in a sense, somewhat of a sacrifice. And in nursing, I'll be really clear about it. Less than 1% of nurses have doctoral degrees. We're highly portable. There's a lot of job opportunities in Canada. So when you're a nurse with a doctorate that comes into an institution like this, you're making a specific choice to be in a particular environment, right? And so what happens is you get that stigma from your graduate institution, and then you come into the institution that's in transition, and they're saying, well, it's great that you do scholarship, but don't do too much, or don't think that it's going to take over, aspects of, of the role or the institution here and that. And so you end up in this really tricky spot where you're trying to create this career and you're getting it from both sides, and all you really want to do is just fit in. You want to teach, you want to do the things that you're passionate about, and you want to be able to engage in scholarship, on your own terms and in your own way.
I wanted to make a comment that perhaps other people here at Mount Royal are also like me in that we chose to come here. So if I wasn't interested in teaching or the students, I wouldn't have considered coming here. So I came here because I do want to teach. And maybe, my tendency is I want to give energy to that, I enjoy it, and I see it as important. And perhaps the other people here are also like that. And so the momentum around me seems to be all so heavy on the teaching side that someone like me can more easily lose sight of the other side of my role and also my goals.
Mount Royal had established a very good reputation as a college, so the addition of a research and scholarship component to the workloads of most faculty, even if mainly voluntary, could be seen as a dilution of that primary mission, taking good faculty away from their primary role in the classroom.
I think most will agree in this day and age that part of what we have to give to students and teach them and train them in their baccalaureate programs is a sense of analytical and critical thinking, very specifically in terms of the disciplines they're learning about. So to do that, one has to really understand the process of scholarship and research. As I said, we're midpoint, or we're somewhere in the middle of this very long-term transition of exploring of how to do that, to actually integrate those activities of scholarship and research into the undergraduate programs. And the most important point is you can only do that if you have your faculty members, or certainly some faculty members, actually active and engaged in scholarship and research.
When I first came here, I was really an advocate for promoting undergrad research, and I know that your office, or the research office, was thinking the same thing. And I think it's really important because I think it's a really good opportunity to provide undergrad students with opportunities that they wouldn't necessarily have at bigger institutions. I mean, I know from experience, the first time I even had a chance to even think about research in my undergrad was my 4th year when I did a thesis project.
Oh, and there are so many of those high flyers. I'm just so, that's the piece I think that excites me the most. And sometimes, you know, those students come from strange places. I remember we'd received this grant to do some work on physical activity, and I put it out to a group of students, and this one student put up her hand and said, "I'd love to do that." Really? You know, because she hadn't stood out for me in class, because the more traditional way of learning didn't work for her. And we're still engaged 7, 8 years later doing that same work. And I'm so proud of how she's moved this forward, how she's helped me develop things. So when we have the opportunity to work outside of class at some of that community work, that community-based research work, it's a whole different set of skills that the students get. It's a whole different set of confidence. They realize that they have much more to offer the community than they did previously.
There are students, we already have many students, thankfully, who take our degree that they earn here and move on to grad school, who want that level of training, of exposure to the level of depth of understanding and the scientific scrutiny to be able to then go to graduate school and continue on and develop their careers, or go on to professional health careers or other kinds of careers in science and technology. We can only get partway there by working sort of in a research light model. We can choose to do that as an institution, but we have to be very careful of how to do that, and it would change science and technology profoundly if we really choose to, you know, keep research a little bit on the side.
Here we come to what may be the crux of the problem. We wanted the university structure and name so that we could keep those students for an additional 4 years. But to do so, we started hiring faculty who saw research as part of their professional lives. And those who've chosen this teacher-scholar route understand intimately that the scholarship side of their TSS role has some thresholds. In science, it may be access to equipment. In psychology, it's access to participants. But everybody has the need for time.
To be honest, it's been a bit stressful. I guess, so my background is theoretical physics. I guess it takes a lot of time just to get some results. You know, you have to really think about problems a lot. So what happens is that in the summertime, I get some progress done, and then maybe early August, end of August, but then school starts, so teaching completely takes over. And then I don't think about it until Christmas. And then Christmas, I try to get some things done, and then once again, teaching takes over. So I haven't been really successful in the theoretical physics side of things, but fortunately, I've found some other avenues to kind of direct my research attentions towards. So I've been more interested now in the physics and physics of sport.
With the people on the teaching scholarship and service work pattern, having to teach 6 classes per year, that's really very close to full-time work, any way you look at it. You know, if we talk formally about what the percentages are in terms of the teaching, the scholarship, and the service, well, it wouldn't be entirely full-time, but in reality, delivering 6 3-hour classes a year is very close to full-time work. Now, what that means is there really isn't very much time to advance your research and scholarship very far.
So you're in this smaller university that isn't research intensive, that used to be a college fairly recently, and are you going to be able to get this done?
Because one of the issues that I find that faculty comes back upon a lot with the TSS stream in particular is that we're paid for an extra 96, SITCH hours for the work that we do, and that we have to somehow prove that we've met that 96 hours throughout the year. And it's fascinating to me because if I was actually to map out what my year looked like in terms of my research hours, I know that I'd be double, triple of what that SITCH looked like.
I don't see that the expectations of my research here are high enough for me to actually succeed in a world doing research. I wish that I was surrounded by more people who are working more on research to help inspire me. My general feeling of the world around me is that people are just getting by, and that although people strive to do more research in their minds, our lack of, say, equipment and time here, everyone is kind of resigned to the fact that we can't actually succeed. And that seems to be the feeling around me. There are very few people around me who kind of get me pumped up.
I think one of the things it mainly does is it causes a division between the two streams as well. And I think that one of the recommendations that I've had before I made the decision to leave Mount Royal was for them to really look at a faculty association level, getting rid of the TS and the TSS streams. It's highly divisive for the faculty culture at Mount Royal. What happens is you end up having people that are doing the same job in two different streams, and each stream is trying to defend what they do to the other, to the institution, to administration.
I think it was the model that we thought would take us forward in the future. We certainly did talk at roles and responsibilities of building a review process. We're probably a couple of years shy of that. But yes, I think it'll have to be reviewed. But I don't think we were thinking in terms of setting up anything temporary. I think we were saying if we were going to have a model going forward to be a teaching university, this is the structure that will get us there.
I think personally, and because I'm leaving Mount Royal soon, I may be back, the teaching stream at Mount Royal is going to die, I bet you, in the next 5 years. Because the natural thing that faculty want to do is go to the life that they know. And the people that we're hiring now are trained and are part of the university system. They're hired within a system. They're going to want the lower workload to do their research.
We could transition. I think it was a good transition to go from where we were to where we are now. But I do think we need to rejig it a bit.
There's those different aspects of an institution. Can't just fit into two categories. I'd like to see it change. I suppose that it will change. I think that it doesn't seem to be working overly well.
I kind of liked the concept of the streams. Not everybody does, certainly, but I kind of liked it coming in because I actually saw in my last experience at University of Calgary, I saw streaming work extremely successfully, and whereby at that institution they have a large proportion of their faculty members on what we would call TSS, basically the research teaching stream, and a smaller and a defined proportion, in fact, on the teaching stream, teaching and service stream. And I actually saw Mount Royal had an opportunity to sort of engage in that kind of system, but but really take the opposite construct and have the smaller stream being those individuals who really have a chance to focus not entirely on research, but to really bring the research and the teaching together. To that be the smaller proportion of the faculty, and the more extensive one actually being on the teaching and service, which would be more Mount Royal-like. Now, that model in of itself also has some challenges because the provincial bodies who regulate our the development, approval, and then review of our undergraduate programs want us to have a lot of research going on. They want us to show our statistics, and when we're not getting enough research accomplished, they tell us very clearly. So, any way you look at it, there's going to be some strains in the system.
The model that the transition committees chose was a 60-30-10 ratio for the TSS stream, corresponding to 60% teaching, 30% research, and 10% service. A simple, fixed ratio that applies to everyone in the stream.
if you're on the TSS stream and you want to just dabble a little bit in research versus you want to maintain a pretty heavy research program, but you're on the same stream, right? How is that managed in terms of things like tenure, promotion?
No, I don't think it was intended to be a permanent solution. And in fact, whenever we threw out those figures, we were always told, those aren't set in stone. Those are just to give us an idea of proportion. And to be perfectly honest, I never thought 60-30-10 being on the TSS stream.
So it's all about how you implement this system of the work patterns and then implement it on a day-to-day basis. It's as important or more important than the development of and what the work patterns are and exactly what the percentages are and that sort of thing. And I say that because I think if you're not paying attention to it each and every day, you can go down the slippery slope of not treating both streams equally and equitably, and starting to privilege one over the other with the language that they use, with the resources and where you allocate resources.
That kind of thing is almost never going to work. I don't know how to fix that. For someone like me, it's metal to the pedal in all three areas all the time. My problem is, how do I slow down? But I recognize that not everybody operates on that. A little more flexibility around recognizing how those things work together would probably be constructive, or could be more constructive, and wouldn't hurt to look at those things, to re-examine those things.
I know 60% teaching, 30% research, 10% service, but what does that actually mean? Does that in terms of time? Is it in terms of, well, I don't know. Like, it's never been really clear to me because, if it's just about time, then I'm not spending 30% on research. I'm spending less. I'm spending more on service. That kind of balance is not there. Someone's told me once, oh, the 60-30-10 means how you're going to be evaluated. So does that mean I could do no service and get 90%? I'm not sure. I mean, it seems kind of artificial and not, I found that kind of separation of tasks a bit frustrating.
I think we have problems with that one from time to time because I hear a large number of faculty use those weightings as the time that they should be spending. And that's not the case, and it's not the reality. Like you say, you can't really maintain a viable research program spending 30% of your time. I think that's what faculty would say. I think I would agree with them on that.
And again, we were trying to build in some of that flexibility because different people do research in different ways. I can't do research one day a week to save my life. I just can't say no well enough and strongly enough, that's why I'm here, to do that, right? So for me, what works is to take a leave for a semester and go away as much as I possibly can and work on it. And because different kinds of research require different kinds of time, we wanted to make that in. I don't know if anybody's taken advantage of that, but that was one of the reasons. We also sort of looked at how far down could we take it to make room for research without becoming a research-focused institution, so it was a bit of a compromise there as well. It gives some time for research, but certainly not a lot. But again, maintains the focus on teaching. Right? So if you want 100% research time, or if you want to teach one course per semester, there are other institutions.
But I want Mount Royal to be successful, and it's a matter of defining what successful is, as I said before. And I want to make sure that those engaged in research have a chance to be successful as defined in the research community, and not defined by ourselves, but defined by the broader community of peer reviewers.
The two streams are certainly the most visible division at Mount Royal, but there are other divides that have eaten away at the notion of complete faculty equality that was once the image that Mount Royal sought in the mirror.
It largely comes, I think, because of generational differences within the faculty. And a lot of people say it's pre-college, post-college, that The post-college folks are pursuing scholarship, or the pre-college or pre-university folks are pursuing teaching as their kind of a task. But it's more than that. There are actually 3 generations. There are those that have been here for a very long time who never envisaged Mount Royal as a university. So people who are 20 years and beyond. Then there are folks like myself who came 15 years ago, who came here because we were going to become a university. And then there are those who have come in the last 5 or 6 years who don't know any difference related to that. And so I think that is playing into these differences. But what's also overlaid with that is our credentials. Most of the people who were hired in kind of the first wave or the 20 years, very few PhDs. The age where I was hired, we were about 50-50. And now everyone is hired with a PhD. To the point now, for example, been fortunate to chair a department, been awarded with several awards at Mount Royal, been promoted and ranked to full professor. I wouldn't be even interviewed if I quit and wanted to reapply for a job because I haven't got a PhD. So those are the things that are reinforcing these kind of solitudes that are starting to emerge. And unfortunately, one of the things that goes with it, with those solitudes, is stereotyping and judgment.
I think there is concern among older faculty who have chosen, or not necessarily older, but longer term faculty, who have chosen to do the TS stream, that maybe as the university develops its new face, that maybe they won't be seen as valuable as the researchers. And I'm hoping, and I believe, that as long as we stay at an undergraduate focus, that teachers will continue to see their value. It's hard to be a researcher in an undergraduate research institution.
I think there's no avoiding finding a place somewhere in between. I believe that's reality. Again, we're hiring a different type of individual into most of our faculty positions. And it's the incoming faculty over time who will help develop the culture.
One of the really nice things about working in a university is that we hire some of the smartest people in the country. On top of that, we hire people who are dedicated to using that intelligence to help others grow. Faculty know the institution, and they know their local circumstances. We need to listen to each other to come up with ways to address these growing solitudes.
So in our side, in our department, there we go, talking about side. So obviously there's a division.
Unfortunately though, the other logic that gets used is a kind of penalizing logic. Like, oh, if that person, they're on scholarship stream, they're not producing. So maybe they'll get their hands spanked and be put over there in that other stream. So the minute you talk about the streams in that way, how can they actually, how can they enjoy a kind of equal respect? Because the one is policed and the other is denigrated. That's not good for anybody.
But I think you need to break away from the mode that you have only teachers and teachers researchers. I don't think it's as black and white as all that. And I've certainly heard a lot of faculty members and department chairs here argue that that's the case, but we have some great scholars who are on TS.
We're trained and we're a product of a university system. That's where you get your master's and PhD is in graduate program, which by default means a larger institution. That's what we're trained to do. And that is, in our own disciplines, the gold standards. A SSHRC, an NSHRC grant is tangible, it's visible, it's something we celebrate. But people that get a great student evaluation score, how do we celebrate that? What's the recognition for that? A person makes a presentation at a conference about a new teaching strategy. How do we celebrate that? In the same way, a person puts, $100,000 SSHRC grant, and is like, wow, good for you. There isn't the other side that recognizes what people do teaching-wise. There isn't the same type of grants. There are some government initiatives that you know of that can do it, but they're devalued by it because you want to be an expert in your discipline. That's what we value first, and you teach on the side. And I don't know how to do it differently. So Trevor, you and I worked on that thing about how to recognize faculty excellence. And we were on that committee that looked at, should we have teaching awards, research awards? And the committee really said, why are we separating? Why are we separating? Let's have, just good faculty awards that would recognize both sides. Although the new award structure has only been around for a couple of years, who are the people that are getting rewarded? That now when I think of it, I wonder if we missed an opportunity to really validate good teaching as a teaching stream. I was all on board with merging that award, but I wonder now if there's no way we can recognize just the excellent teacher at Mount Royal.
It's been interesting. I mean, Mount Royal, there's a lot of promise here, and there are some amazing faculty that are doing research who have been here a long time, and new faculty that are coming in. But there has to be some sort of kind of mutual respect that has to come forward, because the divisions are definitely there.
We're always very focused on how we communicate externally, right? We know how to do that very well at Mount Royal. We do not communicate internally very well at all. And that's where the transition is most difficult. It's easy for the board to agree that you're now a university and you have a workload to reflect that and all, but faculty need to find out things as they're occurring.
But I think that's what would help more than anything, is to regain that sense of shared endeavor.
So I think it starts at the departments, getting really strong and cohesive departments and faculty that are supporting each other in various ways, and then it will move up through a faculty level. And I think that when it starts at the bottom and you get a cohesive group, then you start to shape administration in the institution.
Another way of establishing a dialogue and of crossing boundaries is some kind of mentoring. Mount Royal has established a nationally recognized program for grads mentoring other students. What about the same for faculty?
And maybe something else that we didn't do well was mentor a lot of those new faculty into, so who were we as Mount Royal? What does that look like? What's important to us? Why should you be involved in this or this? Why should your students matter? Why is it important that you have office hours?
I don't know, it's a very good, complicated question. I loved your suggestion a little bit ago about turning good teachers into a resource. So it strikes me that's how mentoring would have to work, that we're good at different things and people have different kinds of needs. So I wonder, I don't know what formally that would look like though, for somebody who really has a rich understanding of what a varied service experience would be like at Mount Royal. Somebody like that could be kind of tapped as a mentor. I don't know, I think it would be interesting.
So there is a perception with faculty coming into the institution that it kind of feels as if it's a kind of a really paternalistic system that we've come into, where we're kind of being modeled, engaged, and monitored, opposed to being kind of welcomed into the fold.
Especially for someone like me, this is my first job after one postdoc. I am just getting going in my career, and I don't really know how to measure myself. I don't have a community to measure myself against here. I don't feel. And I need two things, I think. I need some more guidance on how to be efficient in all of the things I'm expected to do here so that I can continue to work towards what achieving my goals. I need to be shown how to be more efficient because the workload is just high. So we have to be ultra efficient here if we're going to succeed.
So I don't know, it's complicated because sometimes mentoring happens because somebody takes care of someone else who's in need of that, right? Which is just being a good colleague, I think. But you're asking, could there be institutionally something set up to foster? I don't know. Mentoring very quickly becomes power imbalance, and it becomes, what's the word for that when you're speaking down to somebody? It becomes paternalistic very quickly. We don't want that.
We've had a couple of chats about that, those of us who've been promoted to professor. around now, how do we give back? What does that look like? And sometimes we've wondered if new faculty and others want to hear, or do they already have their picture of what they believe they were hired to do and their agenda to accomplish that?
Strategic planning begins with a vision for the future. What's Mount Royal going to be like in 5, 10, or 15 years?
I think we did a lot of work to prepare for the transition, and I think your point in the preamble, we need to continue to work now that we're on the other side of the transition and make sure that that transition is going in a positive direction, whatever that positive direction might be.
I don't think we're going to have a feeling for what that stable state looks like for another 10 or 15 years. So it's a very long-term transition. And as I said, because the magnitude of the change is so enormous that there's just a long way to go to get to where we need to be.
The transition is very slow moving, and it poses a lot of barriers to people that are trying to engage in particular types of research programs. And it's not the structural constraints, because I know that there's been a lot of things that have opened up within the institution, like getting a CIHR chair seat is fantastic. There's a lot of really innovative things going on. But what it was a realization that the culture needs about another 10 or 15 years to transition.
I think we need to make the next 5 years exciting. Somehow, like the transition was exciting because we were going towards something, and now we're just going because we've passed the something we were going towards, right?
My hope is that we would become more like a place like Mount Allison. I see that in terms of the Canadian landscape. I see that as an ideal trajectory that I think we're on. I have to say, I've been teaching undergrads now for 13 years, and I have the most extraordinary students here. Extraordinary. So intellectually capacious, so committed. They're running their own summer seminar this summer on Deleuze and Spinoza because they studied Derrida with me all winter and loved it, and I taught them how to facilitate, and they loved that, so they're facilitating their own. They're amazing! Like, we're already, in terms of quality, I can only speak from the students I am involved with, but the quality is easily what I assume the quality is at Mount Allison. So we're already there in terms of the students' experience and what they bring to the classroom, what they're getting from the classroom. But institutionally, there's a kind of like hanging of the head in a way. Like there needs to be an intellectual pride in what we're already doing.
Again, because we have more researchers here, I mean, we've got people that are doing, great stuff, groundbreaking stuff, publishing in all the best journals if you want it, right? And that's really unique. And they're good teachers. You don't find that combination in every institution. And in Alberta, when you consider, U of L, U of A, U of C are all primarily research focused, we are unique. And I think we need to, going back to this idea of celebrating it, we need to celebrate that internally and externally. And I think that should be our future.
I think you're going to have difficulties with retention, particularly of your PhD prepared faculty. I can say, like, I'm leaving Mount Royal for a variety of reasons, and none of it has to do with Mount Royal structurally as an institution. It doesn't have to do with my colleagues. I've been very happy here. I've had a good quality of work life.
I think I'm going to lose energy. I've come in as feeling like, okay, I've got good energy behind me. I'm going to make this work. I've still got it to put into my life here. But already I'm only in my second year and I'm feeling like, And I can see 10 years from now, if it was me, came in like I did, and nothing changes, it'll be a job and that's it. And I don't think that the university world is a job and that's it. And that's why people don't enter a world like this because they want a 9-to-5 job, I don't think. There may be some, but most people, I wouldn't say that's the case. You don't do grad degrees because you want a job, necessarily. Although new people will continue to come, and they will bring, new energy, and that'll last for, say, a couple years max. So as long as you hire new people all the time.
I think what I've learned from the 26 hours of interviews that went into this film is that we really have lost some of that collegiality. Not the desire for it, but the venues and the time to really sit down and listen to each other. Like almost all stereotypes, the idea of the teaching-only TS faculty and the research-centric new faculty, well, they don't really hold up in the light of day. And the other thing that doesn't hold up is the idea that the transition is done. We're going to be fine-tuning and rejigging this for many years to come. I think I've also learned that the idea of mission drift, where the goals of the transition change over time, well, that's not necessarily something to be scared of. It's called evolution. 225 new faculty and a dozen senior administrators, well, they'll bring a lot of evolutionary pressure on the culture. But if the faculty, the new and the established, can't make their voices heard, or the administration chooses not to listen, well, then we will begin to drift. So what's the answer? Well, it's really not for me to say. There are 390 faculty and 750 staff that I didn't talk to. Maybe it's their voices and their grassroots actions that should determine the path. That's really what the governance of a university should be all about. But to do that, we need to get talking.
We can be a leading undergrad teaching-focused institution with research as a component. I think it's an important component. I don't think that there's a risk of it ever taking over. Of this becoming a U of A, because I've been there, and it is like that. So I don't know. I don't think that's a worry.
And I hope it is kind of the number one place that students want to go to, because we are unique. Right? Class sizes are small. We focus on teaching, and then internally we've got the two streams. We do have gen ed. I think we are unique. I think from an outside point of view, there is still work to be done about convincing, we'll say, the public or the community about kind of who we are. One of the issues and concerns is that kind of college, Mount Royal College, there's a little bit of, I think, a hangover that, we just have a name change. Well, that's not necessarily true.
But also it really depends going back to some of the earlier answers, to what we decide to become, because I don't think we've fully finished that decision-making process, and I'm not surprised that it would take us 5 to 10 years to figure that out, of really what we want to look at, because right now it's probably what we are is not all that sustainable. And again, I talked about the mismatch, some of the resource mismatches, and to make things sustainable, operationally and fiscally sustainable, we have to make some decisions about how we view research and how we resource it, and what are our most important goals and priorities, because we still have a ways to go to get to that point, to make sure that operationally we're sustainable. And as we saw this year, we're teetering with sustainability problems right now.
Yeah, so Mount Royal kind of was a really attractive place for me because initially I thought I could kind of have it all, that I could, have that interaction with the students and take that time to really develop strong pedagogy, but I could also take, a developing research program that was coming through my PhD and work towards, building a scholarship plan and getting active in research. Okay. And I'm actually surprisingly not going forward to a research-intensive institution. I'm stepping back and going to a college. And it's an interesting choice, especially for someone who's been doing research. But I made a decision early on in my career that I didn't want that really intense research focus, that I wanted to have a balance. But I find the cultural constraints are really stressful, because it just feels like no matter how much I work and how much I produce and do things, if there's not that space for the acceptance of the research to happen, then it can become difficult.
Giving faculty who are committed and doing crazy creative things or pursuing really interesting things, giving them flexibility is always going to pay off, because what you're doing is You're giving them space, and they're going to, whatever they bring in their research is going to pay off in the classroom. The payoff will be huge because they're whatever juice they're coming up with outside the classroom is going to flow into that classroom and then back out again. So there's a relationship there, an interlocking. That's why those things aren't separate.
There's no question that things will have to evolve. You'll see what works. I mean, older institutions, some of them have had 100 years to tune themselves, and they still do a little tinkering, but we've had 4 years, and so we're not tuned. We've had our starting model, and we're starting to think about sort of tuning to the next level. And is it a major retuning or is it a fine-tuning? In all areas, I think we have to keep this discussion going, and that comes back to the 10 to 15-year transition.
I think what we're trying to say is, in our own way, we're all scholars, and we're all teachers. And the balance of that may change, but we all need to be both, or we're not contributing properly here. That's really important.
I'm excited about the new administrative hires. Like, my sense is that I feel good about where we're going in terms of deans who have experience at universities and are very invested. I mean, I feel very supported in terms of the intellectual endeavors that I'm doing myself. I'm excited about our new provost. I don't know, I'm feeling pretty good. What I worry about is what we've been talking about, the way in which the discourse ends up being ideological and polemical instead of really allowing us to move forward. So we do need some kind of institutional therapy.
I'm hoping this might be a beginning.
Yeah, it's interesting. Unless it just makes people kind of angry at each other.
I guess I'd like to see our internal community here at Mount Royal have a chance to talk about some of these things more openly, and in the kind of fora where you actually have good numbers of people turn out to spend an hour or two talking about throwing around some ideas. Again, I've thrown around some ideas, and they're not all going to be good ideas. That's how academia works, and so I hope we take the time to explore. And I know by virtue of what you're doing with this film you're putting together, this is going to help. That we take the time to explore, to understand where we are now, what it means, and are we on the track we want to be on exactly, or what kind of changes do we need to make?